Hello and Happy New Year. I am coming to you from Spokane, where it snowed this morning. I love it. It was a beautiful way to wake up to the new year with a fresh coat of snow. Today I wanted to go over and tier rank all of the books that I read in 2024, a few that I regret reading, and then at the end just some of the books I have with me here in Spokane that I'm looking forward to reading in 2025, and then some of the things and creators that I will and will not be supporting in the new year. So, enjoy. So, our tiers are no notes, so like top, the end, fantastic. Tattooed on the back of my eyelids, hashtag history ed, and these are books that it's like only the fact that I am a history major and an education major that I work with middle schoolers can explain why I read them. In its defense, I have none. It was bad, and there is no reason. I have no excuse or reason as for why I read it. And then the bottom tier is an insult to the English language, which I think is pretty straightforward. Starting with Food Fight. I'm gonna put that in history ed. Cute, middle of the braid, well written. Hey Hun. In its defense, I have none. I read that, but I listened to it. That was my one and only audiobook, and it stressed me out. I think I might have liked it maybe a little bit more if I was reading a physical copy. Yeah, no reason. Teach Like Your Hair is on Fire. History ed. That was a textbook. It was not my favorite, but it was okay. Bright. Every time I went through my reading stats, couldn't remember what it was about, or when I read it, or why I read it. So, in its defense, I have none. Distressed and Deliberately Defiant, also for class. That, yeah, I'm gonna stick with in its defense, I have none. Because it's not bad because it's bad because it's outdated. But it's not an insult to the English language. What is, though, is the defining decade. And maybe it's because I am a few years past the target audience, but like, right, like I read this like 2 weeks before I turned 20. Like I was like, I'm gonna read this, I'm gonna learn. And I was like, there's nothing. There's actually nothing here. From the Desk of Zoe Washington, history ed. It was so sweet and so cute, and it handled really like important themes and lessons about incarceration and children with incarcerated parents, and it was really well written, and it was adorable. Good Girls. In its defense, I have none. It was interesting for like the first half, and then it got weird. Tattooed on the back of my eyelids is gonna be Firefly Lane. What is also tattooed are the tear marks and the tear stains right here from that book. Seven Husbands, Evelyn Hugo, no notes. That was a reread. I love it. You can't take that away from me. Last Days of the Midnight Ramblers is an insult to the English language. It was bad. It was a train wreck. I'm actually gonna read you what I wrote about that one. I gave it 1 star on Storygraph. What the fuck did I just read? This book wanted to be Evelyn Hugo, it wanted to be Daisy Jones, it wanted to be a murder mystery, it wanted to be good. In the end, it was none of the above. No matter how hard the reader tried, you just can't root for Mari. And then, this is a little quick spoiler, but I mean, the whole damn book read like she was on barbiturates, not just when Sigurd poisoned her. Speaking of, what the hell was her place in the book? What? Spoiler concluded. Just like Odie and Dante, I stuck with this book out of dedication to Anka. It was bad. 0 out of 10. Do not recommend. Summer of 1976, however, I'm gonna go with history ed because it is historical fiction. That's a play. Who is it by? Is it by David Auburn? Yeah, it's by David Auburn. Beautiful. I love it. Will reread again. Charm City Rocks. We'll go with Tattooed on the Back of My Eyelids. This was adorable. Actually, no, I have no notes. It was adorable. It was fantastic. It was perfect. Everything I could have wanted. Kent State, we're also gonna put in history ed. I love Deborah Wiles. Phenomenal author. Definitely a book I would put in my future classroom library. I didn't expect it to be written in verse. We'll see. Me by Elton John. We're also gonna go in, well, yeah, we'll go with history ed. It's a memoir. It was fascinating. I feel like Elton, and I think he had a co-writer or ghostwriter on this, I feel like it could have been a bit more eclectic and zany and consistent with who Elton John is, but, well, not like, the writing style and the storytelling could have been more consistent with how Elton John presents himself to the world through his art and his storytelling. Like, stylistically, I think that could have come through a bit more in the writing. Old Enough. No notes. Read the trigger warnings first, but no notes. Normal. Hope Was Here. History ed. Adorable. I read and annotated that and then gifted my annotated copy to one of my mentor teachers, and it was so sweet. Good Enough. In its defense, I have none. I don't remember. However, I do remember the next three. The Spectacular and Carrie Soto Is Back are both going straight to no notes because Fiona Davis, I am in fact waiting, like trembling in anticipation for, was it The Stolen Queen, The Secret Queen, that is coming out in 6 days. I can't wait. I am obsessed. And I read The Spectacular in one sitting on the plane flying home from New York. And then Carrie Soto Is Back was just, oh my gosh. Whoa. I know Taylor Jenkins Reid is kind of like not the most solid person, like societally and politically at the moment. So I do only read her books from the library, but goddamn. Carrie Soto was good. For Lamb, oh, that could go 2 ways. I think I'm gonna go Tattooed on the Back of My Eyelids. So good. The Freedom Writer's Diary, history ed. A Little Book for New Historians. Bad. 0 out of 10. Insult to the English language. Did not like it. From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankenweiler. I'm sorry, I know it's a classic. In its defense, I have none. I was going to New York for spring break and someone recommended I read it. And I think I like middle grade books. Like, I do still continue to engage with that genre and like age range, especially working in middle school this year, but like, I think it was just too young for me because the whole time I was like, when are we getting to like Mrs. Basil E? Like, she's the cool character. Where is she? Yeah. Find a Way by Diana Nyad. Tattooed on the Back of My Eyelids. I am obsessed with Diana Nyad, actually, if you couldn't tell from the poster right there behind me. Again, fascinating woman. Is that no notes? I guess it would be no notes. I have no notes. Just phenomenal. I do, however, have notes on Summer of '69. In its defense, I have none. I just don't work with Ellen Hillenbrand's writing style, which was really unfortunate because she has a lot of books, and a handful of them are historical settings, and it just didn't work for me. So I was bummed about that, but I tried. The Disappearance of Astrid Burkhard. Also gonna put this in history ed because it was historical fiction. I read this on a recommendation from K Red Wet, and I think I saw a few other folks reading it, but it did not click for me like I was hoping it would. I loved the time, and I loved the era it was set in, and I loved that it was Like you had writing, not writing, you had multiple perspectives in different chapters from different eras. But I think the content just missed it a little bit for me because I'm not like a fashion history girly. The Masterpiece, tattooed on the back of my eyelids. Small Steps, History Ed. Read that when I was growing up. Love it. Anthem, this was also a reread. Is that tattoo? We're gonna have to go History Ed. Kate Quinn, The Briar Club. No notes. Maybe you should talk to someone. No notes. No notes. I will be rereading that again momentarily, and I love it, and I sob every time. Love Makes Room. I feel like this doesn't fit any of the categories very well. I suppose I would go History Ed because it's vaguely educational. It was good. It was touching, but it wasn't like wasn't a knock me out of the park. What did? Mary Jane. I love Mary Jane. I have read that book at least once a year, every year since I was a senior in high school. Phenomenal. 10 out of 10. No notes. I do, however, have thoughts on Bad Therapy. That was an insult to the English language. If you're thinking that doesn't sound like a book you would read, Laurel, you are correct. A family member was reading it, and I was like, that looks like propaganda. And I read it, and it was propaganda. I don't want to waste words on it. It was so bad. Anyways, Clara reads Proust. It was really well written, but like I think I gave it like 4 stars because of just how beautiful the writing, like the physical writing style was, but it didn't stick with me. So in its defense, I have none. I think people would like this. Like I really think people would appreciate this, especially if you're a Francophile or if you like Proust. Is it Proust or Proust? History major, not English major. Similarly, My Sister's Keeper. In its defense, I have none. It did make me cry. It did hook me. Worst plot twist ever. Nope. Beyond That, The Sea, no notes. I bought that like the weekend going into spring finals, and it was a struggle to do finals afterwards because I was so obsessed. It was historical fiction, just an absolute delight. Similarly, The Great Alone, it's tattooed on the back of my eyelids. So good. So good. The Chelsea Girls, also by Fiona Davis, and The Dollhouse by Fiona Davis, also tattooed to the back of my eyelids. Just everything by Fiona Davis. I think I've already established that. In an IV. Right, yeah, right to my heart. Mirror Me. I just read Mirror Me. I read it in one day right before Christmas. Wow. That's all I have to say, just wow. No notes. People should read it. Check the trigger warnings, but people should read it. Teaching Hope. In its defense, I have none. I liked other... Oh, no, no, we're gonna move that one to History Ed, and we're gonna take Teach Like Your Hair's on Fire down to In Its Defense, I have none. You Don't Have a Shot. History Ed. Adorable. Absolutely delightful. I think I gave it like 4 stars. I'm not a soccer person, so Ophelia After All hit me like a brick. I loved it, and I read that in 2023. You Don't Have a Shot, similarly, fantastic, delightful, beautiful, incredibly representational. Another one I would definitely want to have in a classroom library. I just don't click with soccer. Mrs. Everything, tattooed on the back of my eyelids. I am on a campaign to make everybody read that. Feel the Burn. I don't want to put it in its defense. I have none because I loved it. And we're gonna put this tattooed on the back of my eyelids. I found that at a bookshop at Pike Place. Bernie Sanders Maple Syrup Murder Mystery. It's worth your time. What's Eating Us? Insult to the English language. Unnecessary. The Gown, History Ed. Louder Than Hunger. Louder Than Hunger is also written in verse. And again, I feel like I would have really liked to have seen that in prose. But it was still good. So we're gonna put tattooed on the back of my eyelids. The Magnolia Palace, also tattooed on the back of my eyelids. The Women. No notes. I know. I'm a history major. I love the 1970s, and the Vietnam era is one of my like biggest historical fascinations. I'm sorry to the person who just wrote, I think it was The Atlantic, wrote like a scathing article about how bad the women was. I don't care. It's called historical fiction. And as historical fiction, perfect. No notes. Beach Town. I love Susan Wiggs. I have met her. I've gone to her book signings. Beach Town was good, but all of her books are just that middle of the road. Like, I read them once and I love them and I never need to read them again. So I'm gonna have to go with In Its Defense I Have None, but not in a bad way. That's like when you rate a book 3 stars, but it's like, yay, 3 stars, better than average kind of way. Your Plantation Prom is not okay. History Ed would be a great one to have in the classroom. Nothing's Impossible. Yeah, History Ed, we'll stick it there. I really liked it. I like Lorraine Monroe, but it like, of the education books I read this year, it is not like tattooed to the back of my eyelids, like in my soul, you know? A List of Cages. Oh my god. Perhaps the most like traumatic and like whiplash book you will ever read, but really, really important. It talks a lot about adoption, foster care, child abuse. Still We Rise, tattooed on the back of my eyelids. A Corner of the Universe is History Ed. The same mentor teacher that I annotated Hope Was Here for, she lent me her copy of A Corner of the Universe, and it was, made me cry, but really good. Just Mercy, no notes. On Air with Zoe Washington, also History Ed, great for history classroom. Finding Langston, also History Ed. It was good, but again, I wanted prose, I didn't want verse. My Last Innocent Year. I think I'm gonna have to go with In Its Defense I Have None. Really well written, important story. Not for me. That's about all I got there. Ellen Hillenbrand, Summer of '79. I'm gonna go Insult to the English Language, because that was not a satisfying conclusion at all. All the Summers in Between. It was an interesting concept. It did not deliver for me. I'm sorry. How Does That Make You Feel? Magda Ackman. I just read this, so I don't know if it's like seared into my brain forever yet, but at the moment, and especially because like I bought a physical copy, tattoo it on the back of my eyelids. Phenomenal book. We're running out of space. We're at The Light Enders, Dr. Jill, no notes. Oh, beautiful. The Sunday Daughter, History Ed. I gave that 5 stars and I barely remember it. I don't know. You Don't Live Here also would be History Ed, great for a classroom. Fly Away, the follow-up to Firefly Lane. tattooed on the back of my eyelids. And then, oh, what's the, Lies We Tell Ourselves, also history ed. However, I had some qualms with Lies We Tell Ourselves. Like, there was like a character arc situation going for one character, and it was like, oh my gosh, it's a revelation, this is fantastic. But she was still super racist. So, oppressed groups can still oppress other groups, right? So I don't think queerness made up for the fact that at the end of the book, one character was still racist. If that makes sense. That's vague, I don't want to spoil all of it. It was well written and fascinating, I have a problem with that. So, that's where it all comes down to. Those are the books I read. I'm gonna go through my Storygraph data too real quick. All right, per Storygraph, I read 69 books this year, and that totaled 21,952 pages. The first book was Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb. I love it. I brought it back to school with me. No notes. And then the last book was How Does That Make You Feel? Magda Eklund. I don't know how I feel about my very first and my very last book both being about therapists. Kind of weird. Anyways, my reading map, my mood map is interesting to me because I think I just read more and more fiction as the year progressed, because it starts like really low, which is unexpected. You traverse the landscapes of the heart, engaged in introspective musings, and uncovered a wealth of knowledge. The narratives flowed at a comfortable, engaging tempo. There were 3 months that I read 10 books each, and that was February, June, and July, which makes sense. And then November was the only month I didn't finish a book, which was unfortunate, but not unexpected. November was chaotic. Genres I spent the most time with: historical with 22, contemporary with 17, literary with 12, young adult with 11, and LGBTQ with 9. The longest book I read was Louder Than Hunger, 528 pages, and the shortest book was Summer 1976, which is 58 pages. That makes sense, it's a play. Average length was 318 pages, and it took about 4 days to finish each book. I think, well, I mean, the next stat is least time spent on a book was 1 day, and there were a handful of, like, I read a lot of books in 1 day, but then, like, I was rereading Where the Light Enters by Jill Biden over this span of like 2 months, so it technically means that I spent 52 days reading it, so that one knocks off my stats a bit there. But I think 4 days per book is pretty average. Authors I spent the most time with: Fiona Davis at 5, Kristen Hanna at 4, and Freedom Writers at 2. My average rating was 3.78 stars. That makes sense. My 5-star reads, and all of these made it to the, almost all of these made it to the no notes category, but Maybe You Should Talk to Someone, 7 Husbands, Carrie Soto, The Women, Just Mercy, Beyond That the Sea, Where the Light Enters, Briar Club, Someday Daughter, Old Enough, and Mirror Me. The Someday Daughter? I don't know. The ending was really good, but how that happened, I don't recall. Then it's just a bit of my readings. Some months were better than others. August, my average rating was 4.75 stars versus February. My lowest rated month with an average of 3.45. That makes sense. January and February I had a lot of like academic books as well. June was my highest reading month with 3,691 pages across 10 books. The most popular book with Storygraph users that I read was 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. The least popular was Nothing's Impossible, Lessons on Leadership by Lorraine Monroe, which is unfortunate because I think people should read that. I think there's an interesting conversation to be had now about like the level of exertion put out by teachers and like contract hours, working your wage, etc., etc. But I think her book is still phenomenal. The highest rated book on Storygraph that was also that I read was Just Mercy. Truly no notes. Like, I have nothing there, you just have to read it. Storygraph's average is 4.73 stars and my rating was a 5-star. And then 46 new authors. Then it says I reread 4 books this year. And then I finished everything I picked up, no DNFs. That's because I don't put my DNFs on Storygraph. I only record it when I know I'm gonna finish it. Like, if I pick it up and I don't care for it, I'm not gonna bother plotting it or like putting it in there, because and I pick up so many books to just read like 2 or 3 chapters, or I'll have like collected essays or something for a class. So it's like I don't want to put a DNF book on here. I don't feel the need to. 20 books for my own shelves. That's about right. And then 2024 at a glance. All my titles. No, all my covers. So there's that. They're all in my bookish stats from 2024. Going into 2025, I have a few goals. I'm not setting like a book goal because I am student teaching, finishing my bachelor's, applying for grad school. Lord willing, I should be in my master's program. Lord willing, by September. And even if I'm not, I will be in a classroom teaching. So it's gonna be a very busy year. So I'm not gonna try and hold myself to like a specific reading goal, like, and having that counted down in the apps, and just like, I'm gonna be busy. We'll see what comes. Some other things I'm gonna be changing in 2025 with my book stuff is who I like watch and like give my time and like advertising money and whatnot to. I will not be watching or supporting Jack Edwards. This might be a hot take. He is just the king of consumption, and it's getting to be a bit gross. Yeah, I don't like his past, I think 3 or 4 main channel videos, and like on his like second channel are just like buying new books to fill my library. Like, I also would like to someday amass a magical, beautiful, large collection of books, but I want to do that through like meaningful collection and consumption, like collecting books that I actually want to own and read, not just buying tens to hundreds of books at a time for the sake of like building your physical TBR. I don't vibe with that. And yeah, his content is kind of geared towards only talking about like the sheer number of books, as opposed to like content about various books. And I think versus he just goes out and buys a bunch of books. I know many of them are gifted, and he does support a lot of independent bookstores, which is fantastic, but I think we need to cool just the sheer amount of consumption. Thank you. I am still meandering around YouTube for what kind of like other book related content I want to watch and engage with, because I'm not a fantasy person. I'm not a murder or mystery or thriller person. And like, I do like historical and academic books, obviously, because like that's just what I want to do, but there's not like Caitlin Grace Apple. I really like her content, and especially how she merges her reading with her academics and work. But the books that she talks about are majority fantasy. I don't like fantasy. So we'll see. Someone I will continue to support is Kay Read What. The beautiful, lovely, helpful Kayla. Kay Read What. Professional book girl. Stamp of approval. A handful of the books like that I read and highlighted here were recommendations from her current podcast, Professional Book Girl, or the previous podcast she was on, which is Books in the City. So if you need a bookish podcast, sign up. I also learned my lesson with Hey Hun. I will not be doing audiobooks. I can't do it. I don't know what it is. I cannot do it. They weird me out. I got really anxious trying to like listen to it. No audiobooks. No Jack Edwards. No hard and fast reading goal. Yes, libraries. Yes, Professional Book Girl. Yes, just appreciating reading. I think there's a part of me that is always kind of nervous and I'm like, oh no, I'm not reading enough nonfiction. Life is short. I consume a lot of nonfiction and like historical like sources and papers and whatnot for my schooling and for my degree and for my future job. So I don't think I need to put that pressure on myself to make it known to the public that I'm reading a lot of nonfiction when that's not really what's important. I'm tracking my stats for me. However, if you want to see what I read, I will link my Storygraph down below because I love it. I love it. I love Storygraph. I love it. I have a handful of books down there. Also, saying no, saying goodbye, blocking anyone in any content that uses the phrase physical TBR. It's called a bookshelf, actually. It's called a bookshelf. There are my thoughts on books and the year. Thank you for watching. Thanks for sticking around.